Good morning, good afternoon, and good evening to everyone who joins us from around the world. We're so glad you're here.
This is Andrew and Renee. Welcome to the Stack series.
Today, we are exploring the architecture of etiology.
Now, that sounds like a bit of a mouthful, doesn't it?
It does, etiology.
But what it really boils down to, the core of it, is we're tracing the history of how humanity has tried to answer one very specific, very human, and frankly, terrifying question.
Why do we get sick?
Exactly. Why do we get sick?
It's the universal human experience, isn't it? I was thinking about this on the way into the studio. You wake up, maybe your throat is scratching or you have that weird ache behind your eyes, and instantly your brain just goes into this detective mode, but it's a panic detective mode. You aren't just feeling the symptoms, you are demanding a narrative.
Yes. A story.
A story. What is this? Did I eat something? Is it that person who sneezed on the train? Is it something worse?
Exactly.
Yes.
That demand for a narrative,
Yeah.
that's really the engine of medical history. We crave causality.
We need a reason.
We need a reason. Because if you know the cause, the etiology, you feel like you can find the control. If you know why it's happening, well, maybe you can stop it. But for the vast, vast majority of human existence, that why was a complete black box.
Or maybe a box filled with invisible, terrifying things.
Well, that's just it. It was filled with spirits, with demons, with the anger of the gods.
So we're going to be covering a lot of ground today. We are moving from a world where, say, a fever was interpreted as a literal demon sitting on your chest, through the era where we blamed the wind and bad air, all the way to the discovery of this invisible microbial world, and then finally to the complex genetic maps we use today.
And the mission here isn't just to list discoveries. We aren't just going to say, in 1800 they found this, in 1900 they found that.
It's not a timeline.
It's not a timeline. We want to look at how the concept of illness, the very idea of it, changed how humans view their place in the universe. It's a shift from being, a victim of the cosmos to being a manager of a biological machine.
That's a great way to put it. So let's start at the beginning, or at least the beginning of recorded history. Let's start with the foundations, what we thought we knew in the ancient world. Let's go to Mesopotamia.
The cradle of civilization. And, in many ways, the cradle of diagnosis. The Mesopotamians were incredible bureaucrats. They wrote everything down on clay tablets.
Receipts, laws.
And medical texts. A lot of them. But when you look at their medical system, you see this really fascinating split. They didn't separate the spiritual from the physical the way we try to do today.
Right. I was looking at the notes on the practitioners. You had two distinct types of experts. You had the ashipu and the asu.
Yes.
And looking at their job descriptions, it feels like the difference between, a priest and a paramedic.
That's a very good way to put it. A
Okay.
spiritual counselor and a field medic. And they often worked in tandem. Let's look at the ashipu first.
Oh.
He was the exorcist, the magician. His primary role was to address the why. In the Mesopotamian worldview, you didn't just catch a cold. The universe was this ordered place, governed by gods and spirits. If you were sick, it meant that order had been breached.
So you did something wrong.
You did something wrong, you had sinned, or you'd neglected the sacrifice, or maybe a demon had just decided to attach itself to you. It was a moral failing or a spiritual attack.
The texts are so specific about this liability. You see diagnoses like the hand of Ishtar or the hand of Shamash or even the hand of a ghost.
Yes.
It sounds almost like a legal indictment, like you were being sued by the ghost of your grandfather.
It essentially was.
Yeah.
The ashipu's job was to figure out which god or which spirit was angry and why. It was a diagnostic of agency. Some entity did this to you.
So the treatment would be what? An apology?
An apology, an incantation, charms, rituals to appease that entity. It was all about restoring that cosmic balance you had upset. But then, while all that is happening, you have the asu.
The asu. This is the one that feels much more familiar to us. This is the physician, the person who dealt with the how.
Yes, the asu was the pragmatist. While the ashipu was chanting over you, the asu was washing the wound, applying poultices, mixing herbs.
And they used a lot of substances we'd still recognize today, right?
And they did. Honey, for instance, which we know has antiseptic properties. Various plant extracts, minerals. It was very hands-on.
But they also used some things that we would find less appealing. There's a lot of animal dung in these recipes.
There is. And, historians debate that endlessly. Was it purely magical? The idea of using something filthy to disgust the demon so it would leave the body?
Like fighting fire with fire?
Sort of, or was there some misunderstood chemical property? Or maybe was it just that they were throwing everything at the wall to see what stuck? We don't really know.
But the key is that these two, the magical and the pragmatic, weren't enemies.
Not at all. You would often hire both.
Huh.
You wanted the asu to bandage your head, but you wanted the ashipu to tell the demon why it should leave your head in the first place.
There is one example from the sources that I think just perfectly encapsulates this blend of the physical and the mythical.
Oh, I think I know which one you mean.
The legend of the worm. This is about toothaches.
Oh, this is a classic.
Yeah.
It's one of the most vivid and, frankly, creepy texts we have.
So the prevailing theory was that a toothache was caused by a literal worm, which, if you've ever had a throbbing cavity, it actually feels emotionally true. It feels like something is burrowing in there.
And visually, a cavity looks like a wormhole. I mean, it's a very logical deduction if you don't have a microscope.
Right. But the text doesn't just say a worm causes it.
Uh-huh.
It explains the origin of this worm. It's this dramatic dialogue. The worm goes before the sun god, Shamash, and starts weeping because it's hungry.
The gods try to placate it. They offer it ripe figs and apricots.
Standard worm food, you'd think.
Exactly. But the worm refuses. It says, and I love the translation here, "What use are ripe figs to me? Lift me up among the teeth and the gums. The blood of the tooth I will suck, and the roots of the gums I will gnaw."
That is just visceral horror. It turns a simple toothache into this epic battle against a vampiric parasite living in your own mouth.
It does. It gives the pain an identity, a monster. And so the treatment reflects that. The tablet ends with this powerful incantation. "Because you have said this, O worm, may Ea smite you with the might of his hands."
So you're cursing the worm.
We're cursing the worm. But, and here's the kicker, the perfect blend. The instructions then say, mix beer, the plant kill beer, and oil together. Repeat the incantation 3 times and put it on the tooth.
So you yell at the worm, but you also apply a numbing agent.
Precisely. And the plant mentioned, kill beer, likely had analgesic or narcotic properties, something like henbane. So the patient feels better. The pain stops.
And in their mind, who gets the credit? The curse or the plant?
Both. It didn't matter. The ritual and the remedy were one and the same thing. They worked together.
Now, if being a patient was scary, invoking angry gods and worms, being a doctor sounds even more terrifying. We have to talk about the Code of Hammurabi.
Oh, yes. The stakes.
We usually cite this for criminal law, an eye for an eye. But there are specific statutes for surgeons, and they are brutal.
This is arguably the first instance of medical malpractice law in history, and it had teeth. Literally.
I was reading the statutes, Statute 218. If a physician make a large incision with the operating knife and kill him, or open a tumor with the operating knife and cut out the eye, his hand shall be cut off.
Just stop and think about that. The pressure that puts on a surgeon. You are holding a bronze lancet, which is not as sharp as modern steel. You don't have effective antibiotics, you don't have anesthesia, and if your hand slips, you lose that hand. Permanently.
It certainly disincentivizes risky experimental surgery.
It creates an incredibly conservative medical culture. You only do what you absolutely know will work. But it also reveals something really important about how they valued life. The penalties changed based on who the patient was.
Right. If the patient was a free man or an aristocrat, the doctor lost his hand. But if the patient was a slave...
The rules changed completely. If the surgeon kills a slave, he just has to replace the slave with another slave of equal value.
Like breaking a piece of pottery.
Exactly. If he blinds the slave, he pays half the slave's value to the owner. The body of a slave was property, like a table or a cow. The body of a free man was a vessel of social power.
So the medicine and the risk the doctor took was dictated entirely by the social hierarchy, not just the biology.
Precisely. Health was commodified. It was a currency of power.
It's a fascinating, if brutal, system. They were looking for answers everywhere, in the stars, in the anger of spirits, and even in the livers of sheep.
Hepatoscopy, divination.
Yeah.
They would sacrifice a sheep and inspect the liver to diagnose the human patient. They believed the liver was the seat of life and that the gods literally wrote the patient's fate on it.
It's a far cry from a blood test.
A very far cry.
Yeah.
But it shows they were desperately looking for signs. They believed the world was legible, that it could be read if you just knew the language.
So that's Mesopotamia. High stakes, angry gods, and the occasional poultice. But if we travel east, over to the Indus Valley civilization places like Mohenjo-Daro and Harappa, we see a completely different approach. It feels strangely modern.
It does. The contrast is jarring. In Mesopotamia, you have these massive temples, ziggurats, all reaching up to the gods. In the Indus Valley, The most prominent, most impressive structures aren't temples.
They're bathhouses?
They're bathhouses. They are drains. They are public works.
They were the engineers of hygiene.
Completely. And we have to remember, we don't have a Rosetta Stone for the Indus script, so we can't read their medical textbooks if they even had them. But the architecture, the city planning, it tells the story for them.
What are we seeing?
In Mohenjo-Daro, almost every single house had a dedicated bathing area. They had vertical terracotta pipes inside the walls to carry wastewater down to street-level drains. These drains were covered with brick slabs, not open sewers, and they had inspection holes and soak pits to manage the sediment.
This is 2500 BCE. They had better plumbing than London did in 1850.
Without a doubt. And this implies a completely different understanding of health, a different etiology. In Mesopotamia, you get sick because of a sin. In the Indus Valley, the layout of their cities suggests they understood that you get sick because of filth.
So do you think they understood contagion? Or was this more about ritual purity?
That's the big debate, isn't it?
Yeah.
In many ancient cultures, physical cleanliness and spiritual purity are the same word, the same concept. To be clean is to be holy.
Sure.
But the engineering is so practical, so functional, that it just has to be based on empirical observation. They must have noticed. When we live in our own waste, we die. When we wash it away, we thrive.
So it was a kind of public health before medicine even really existed as a discipline.
Exactly. Prevention by design. They didn't need to know what a bacterium was to know that sewage in the street was a very, very bad idea.
It's a lesson we keep forgetting and relearning, it seems.
It is. But let's swing back to the West, over to Egypt. Because if Mesopotamia gave us the law, and the Indus Valley gave us the plumbing, then Egypt gave us the textbook.
The Ebers Papyrus.
Yes. This thing is massive. It dates to around 1550 BCE. It's a single scroll over 20 meters long.
Wow.
And it contains about 842 different remedies and incantations. It is the Wikipedia of ancient Egyptian medicine.
And what really stands out to me is how they viewed the body's interior. They had this concept of the metu.
The metu. This is fascinating because it shows how our environment shapes our imagination. The Egyptians lived and died by the Nile River. Their entire existence depended on the river flooding, the channels irrigating the fields, the water flowing.
And if the channels got blocked?
If the channels got blocked, the crops died. If the flood was too high or too low, disaster struck. Everything was about flow and canals.
So they applied that same hydraulic model to the human body.
Exactly. They saw the body as a network of channels, the metu. These vessels connected the heart to every other part of the body. But here's the key difference. They didn't distinguish between different systems like we do.
What do you mean?
They thought these vessels carried blood, yes, but also air, tears, urine, mucus, and sperm. Everything flowed together in this one interconnected system.
So illness, in this view, is a blockage. It's a clog in the pipe.
It's a clog in the pipe, or a pollution, a rising miasma from the bowels that pollutes the channels. So naturally, the primary treatment was to clear the blockage. This is why Egyptian medicine was utterly obsessed with purging.
Oh, okay.
They used emetics to make you vomit. They used suppositories. They used laxatives constantly. Castor oil was a favorite, and we know today that castor oil is a very effective, very violent laxative.
They were trying to flush the system.
Constantly. But again, it's a mix. They also use willow bark, right?
Which we know contains salicin, the chemical precursor to aspirin.
Yes, for pain. So you have this mix. They're chanting spells to drive out the demon of the blockage, but they're also giving you a powerful anti-inflammatory to treat the symptoms. It's always both.
There was one thing the Greek historian Herodotus mentioned about the Egyptians that always makes me laugh. He said the country is swarming with medical practitioners and that they are all specialists.
Oh, yes.
One treats only the diseases of the eye, another those of the head, another the teeth, another the belly.
It sounds remarkably like the modern American healthcare system, doesn't it?
All right.
You need a referral for everything.
It really does.
But it shows a certain level of sophistication. In a small tribal society, the shaman does everything. In a highly stratified bureaucratic empire like Egypt, you have specialization. You have a hierarchy of knowledge.
Okay, so let's move to the East again, because we need to talk about how India and China were handling this. We see a shift here that I think is crucial. In Mesopotamia, it's demons. In Egypt, it's fluids and blockages. But in Ayurveda and traditional Chinese medicine, or PCM, it becomes about balance.
This is the foundation phase maturing. We are moving from the gods are attacking me to something more like my internal elements are out of whack.
Let's start with Ayurveda, the tridosha theory.
This is such a beautiful conceptual framework. Instead of looking at the body as a victim of external spirits, Ayurveda looks at the body as a microcosm of the entire universe.
Yeah.
The universe is made of 5 elements: space, air, fire, water, and earth. And the human body is governed by 3 fundamental energies, or doshas, which are combinations of these elements.
And those are Vata, Pitta, and Kapha.
Right. Vata is air and ether. It's the energy of movement, impulse, creativity, the nervous system. Pitta is fire and water. It's metabolism, digestion, transformation, body heat. And Kapha is earth and water.
Yeah.
It's structure, lubrication, stability, the body's tissues.
And the idea is that we all have a unique mix of these three, like a constitutional blueprint.
Yes, your prakriti, your natural state.
Yeah.
Health is defined as maintaining that unique balance. Disease, or vikriti, is when that balance is disturbed.
So, for example?
If you have too much pitta, too much fire, you might experience symptoms we associate with heat fevers, rashes, inflammation, heartburn, or even anger and irritability.
And if you have too much Kapha, too much earth and water,
you might get congestion, lethargy, weight gain, sluggishness. It's a very intuitive system. The treatment is to bring the opposite quality. If you have too much heat, you use cooling herbs, cooling foods, a cooler environment.
What I love about this is that it forces you to look at the whole person. You don't just treat the rash, you treat the heat. You have to ask, what are you eating? Are you stressed? What is the weather like?
And that weather point is key. Ayurveda has this concept of desha, which means the land, or geography. It explicitly states that the environment you live in dictates your health.
So where you live matters.
It matters immensely. A person living in a marshy, wet land, a kapha-aggravating land, is prone to different diseases than someone in a dry, arid desert, which is a vata land. It connects the internal biology to the external geography in a way that modern medicine is only just now getting back to with fields like medical ecology.
And we see a parallel in China with TCM, the concept of qi and the balance of yin and yang.
Very similar. It's all about flow and harmony. But TCM has a really interesting way of categorizing the causes of disease. They didn't really use demons in the same way. They used the 6 evils, or 6 excesses.
That sounds like a great band name.
It does. And they are wind, cold, summer heat, dampness, dryness, and fire.
But those are just weather patterns.
Exactly. They viewed the body as a fortress or a kingdom. Your protective energy, your wei qi, is the army on the walls. The climate is the enemy trying to invade.
So it's an external threat.
It's an external threat, but it's a natural one. If your defensive qi is strong, you can walk through a cold wind and be fine. Your army repels the invader. But if your defenses are weak, the cold invades.
And what happens then?
Well, they have these diagnostic frameworks, like the 4 levels or the 6 stages, that track the invader as it moves deeper into the kingdom. First, it attacks the surface, the skin and muscles, giving you aches and chills. If you don't expel it, it moves deeper into the meridians and finally into the organs themselves.
It's like a military strategy for diagnosis.
It is. And the treatment is to expel the invader.
Yeah.
If you have an invasion of cold, you use warming herbs like ginger or cinnamon. You use moxibustion, which is burning mugwort over acupuncture points. You don't just kill a germ. You change the entire terrain of the body so the cold can't exist there anymore.
So bringing this whole first section to a close, we see a clear trajectory. We start with the supernatural, the angry gods of Babylon. We move to the mechanical, the blocked pipes of Egypt. And we finally arrive at the elemental, the imbalance of forces in India and China.
But notice what is missing from all of them. The one thread that's absent.
A physical cause, a tangible agent.
Right. They have metaphors, they have spirits, they have elements, they have brilliant, complex systems, but they don't have the thing itself. They don't have the biological agent. And that brings us to our next phase, the active debate.
The rational turn.
The moment where humanity tries to strip away the magic and find the reason.
And for that, we have to go to Greece.
We do, with Hippocrates.
Oh.
Or rather, the collection of writers and texts that we call the Hippocratic corpus.
There is one text in that collection that I think changes everything. It's a treatise on epilepsy called On the Sacred Disease.
It is one of the most important documents in the history of human thought. I mean, before this, epilepsy was the ultimate divine illness.
You can see why.
Absolutely. Look at a grand mal seizure. The person falls, they convulse, they foam at the mouth. It looks for all the world like possession. It looks like a god has taken hold of them. Hence, the sacred disease.
But the author of this text comes out swinging. The opening is just scathing. I have it here, he says. It appears to me to be no wise more divine, nor more sacred than other diseases, but has a natural cause from which it originates like other affections. Men regard its nature and cause as divine from ignorance and wonder.
That is a mic drop. He is calling out the entire religious establishment. He is saying, you call it magic because you are ignorant. I call it nature. He then locates the cause in the brain. He says it's an issue of phlegm blocking the air passages in the brain.
Now, anatomically, he was wrong about the phlegm part.
He was completely wrong about the phlegm. But philosophically, he was 1,000% right. He separated medicine from theology for the first time in the West. He took the gods out of the equation.
And out of this new naturalistic thinking, they developed the humoral theory, the four humors.
Blood, phlegm, yellow bile, and black bile. This became the dominant dogma of Western medicine for the next 2,000 years.
It feels similar to the doshas in Ayurveda, doesn't it? Another system of balance?
Very similar. It's another hydraulic balance model. Each humor was associated with a quality hot, cold, wet, or dry, and an element, and a season. Health was the correct balance, the eucrasia. Disease was an imbalance, a dyscrasia.
And it was so logical. That's why it stuck for so long.
Incredibly logical. If someone presents with a fever, they're flushed, they're sweating, they might be manic. In this system, they're clearly hot and wet. They have an excess of blood. So what is the logical treatment?
You have to cool them down and dry them out.
Exactly. Or you simply remove the excess fluid. You open a vein and let some of it out.
Bloodletting. We look back at it now as this barbaric, almost monstrous practice. Oh, you're sick. Let me cut your arm and drain a pint of your life force.
But in the context of their theory, it made perfect rational sense. It wasn't random cruelty. It was balancing the ledger. It was a targeted intervention based on their understanding of the body.
And that's the danger of a good theory. If the internal logic is sound, you can ignore the fact that the patient is getting weaker and dying in front of you.
That's it exactly. And this brings us to Galen.
Galen of Pergamon, the Roman physician who took Hippocrates' work and basically set it in stone.
Galen was a genius, there's no doubt about it. He was a brilliant anatomist. He performed vivisections on animals. He mapped the nervous system. He proved that arteries carried blood, not air, which was a huge discovery. But the problem wasn't Galen. The problem was what came after Galen.
The frozen doctrine.
That's the term. After the fall of the Roman Empire, Galen's writings were preserved, and they became sacred scripture in both the Islamic world and in Christian Europe. For 1,500 years, you could not question Galen.
So if you were a physician in, say, 14th century Paris,
your job was not to discover new things. Your job was to read Galen and apply his teachings. If you dissected a human body, which was very rare, and you thought something that contradicted Galen, who mostly dissected pigs and Barbary apes.
You didn't say Galen is wrong.
Never. You would say, this body is deformed. Or, even more amazingly, some wrote, human anatomy must have changed since Galen's time.
That is the definition of the anti-scientific method. It's fitting the evidence to the theory, not the theory to the evidence.
It stalled medical progress for over a millennium. We were stuck in the humoral trap. But while the humoral theory explained what was happening inside the body, there was this huge active debate about what was happening outside. How do diseases travel? Why does an epidemic hit a whole city at once?
Enter the miasma theory, the theory of bad air.
Miasma. This is often painted as the villain of our story, but it's a very sympathetic villain because, Andrew, be honest, if you walk past a rotting heap of garbage or a stagnant swamp and you inhale that foul, sulfurous smell, doesn't it feel dangerous?
It does. It triggers a gag reflex. Your body's telling you, get away from this. It feels like the smell itself is an invasion.
And 99% of the time, places that smell like that are dangerous. Swamps have mosquitoes that carry disease. Rotting garbage has rats and bacteria. So the correlation was 100% correct. Bad smells equal disease.
And the word malaria literally means mal for bad, aria for air, bad air.
Exactly. The theory was that rotting organic matter garbage, corpses, swamp water, releases a poisonous vapor, a noxious mist, and if you breathe it in, it corrupts your humors and you get sick.
And this theory reigned supreme well into the 19th century.
It did. And here is the fascinating twist. The people who believed in miasma, the miasmatists, were actually the good guys. They were the social reformers.
This is the political angle I found so interesting. We tend to think wrong theory equals bad science, but the miasmatists were the ones fighting for sanitation.
They were. They looked at the new industrial cities, London, Paris, New York, which were cesspools. The great stink of London in 1858, when the Thames was basically an open sewer. The miasmatists said, this smell is killing us. We must pave the streets, build sewers, improve ventilation, and clean up the slums.
And when they did those things, disease rates actually went down.
Yes. They were doing the right thing for the wrong reason. By cleaning up the smell, they were inadvertently removing the breeding grounds for bacteria, for rats, for fleas. So their success reinforced the wrong theory. They'd say, see, we got rid of the smell and the cholera stopped.
But there was an opposition camp, the contagionists.
The contagionists, they believed disease wasn't in the air, but was passed from person to person, either by touch or by some kind of transmissible agent.
Which sounds right to us now. That's how we think of catching a cold.
It is right. But in the 19th century, contagionism was a politically and economically dangerous idea.
How so?
Well, if a disease is contagious, what's the solution?
Quarantine.
Quarantine. You have to shut down the port. You have to stop trade. You have to lock people in their homes. That destroys the economy. It infringes on personal liberty.
So the liberals, the free market merchants, they loved miasma theory because the solution was just infrastructure and cleanup.
Exactly. It was a civic improvement project. But the contagionists were seen as authoritarian. Their solution was state control. So science does not happen in a vacuum. It happens in an economy. And for a long time, miasma was the business-friendly theory.
Until one man, a pump handle, and a map changed everything.
Dr. John Snow.
The Broad Street pump. This is the detective story that marks the turning point.
London, 1854.
Yeah.
A massive, horrifying cholera outbreak hits the Soho district. It is devastating. People are healthy in the morning and dead by nightfall. The miasmatists naturally blame the air. The local sewers are backing up. The smell is horrific. It's an open and shut case for them.
But John Snow, a physician who had treated cholera patients before, he's skeptical. He's noticed something. The disease starts in the gut, not the lungs.
That's a crucial observation. If it were a poison you inhaled, you'd expect coughing, lung issues. But cholera is violent diarrhea and vomiting. So Snow thinks it has to be something we swallow.
So he starts mapping. He goes door to door. He draws a map of the neighborhood and puts a little black bar for every death at the address where it happened.
The ghost map. And as he plots the data, a pattern emerges. The deaths aren't random. They aren't clustered around the smelliest sewer vents. They're clustered overwhelmingly around one specific public water pump on Broad Street.
But he needed more proof. The smoking gun. And he found it in the form of negative proof, the anomaly that proves the rule. The brewery.
I love this detail. There's a brewery right in the middle of this death zone, dozens of workers, but almost none of them got sick. So Snow goes to interview them. And the foreman tells them, oh, we don't drink water from the pump. We get a free allowance of beer every day.
And the fermentation process, the boiling of the water to make the beer, it killed the cholera bacteria.
Exactly. Plus, the brewery had its own private deep well. So Snow has his smoking gun. He goes to the Board of Guardians, the local council, and he shows them his map, his data. He tells them the poison is not in the air. It is in the water from this pump.
And he asks them to do something incredibly simple, but also radical. Remove the handle from the pump.
Just take the handle off so no one can use it. They were skeptical, but they were also desperate. So they did it. They sent a man to remove the handle.
And the outbreak stopped.
Almost immediately, the number of new cases plummeted.
And that was the end of miasma theory, right?
Right.
A public triumph for science.
You would wish. But no. The medical establishment hated Snow's idea. The Board of Health called it conjecture. They actually put the handle back on the pump a few weeks later. They said, we can't imagine how water, which looks clear, can kill, while the air, which smells like death, is safe.
So even with the evidence right in front of them,
they couldn't break from their paradigm. It took decades for miasma to truly die. But Snow had cracked the door open. He proved that the environment wasn't just a bad atmosphere. It was a vehicle for specific, tangible agents of disease.
And that brings us to the frontiers. The moment the invisible world is finally, definitively revealed. The germ theory revolution.
This is the biggest shift in the entire history of medicine. We stop guessing and start seeing.
And it begins, surprisingly, not with a doctor, but with a French chemist, Louis Pasteur.
That's right. Pasteur wasn't an MD, he was a chemist. And he was hired to figure out a very important French problem: why wine and beer were going sour.
Prioritizing the essentials.
Absolutely. But in studying fermentation, he discovered, using his microscope, that it wasn't a simple chemical process, it was a biological one. Living organisms, yeast, were doing the work. And if bad organisms got in, the wine got sick.
He also famously disproved spontaneous generation.
Yes, which is a wild idea to us now. But before Pasteur, people genuinely believed that if you left meat out, maggots just appeared. That the inanimate meat transformed into living maggots, or that dust transformed into fleas.
Life from non-life.
Exactly. Pasteur used his brilliant swan neck flask experiment. He showed that if you boiled a broth to sterilize it and then kept airborne dust and microbes out with a curved flask neck, the broth stayed sterile forever. Life only comes from life. Omne vivum ex vivo.
So if wine gets sick because of a germ, and broth gets sick because of a germ, and even silkworms get sick because of a parasite, which he also proved.
Then maybe, just maybe, humans get sick because of germs too. That's the monumental leap.
But Pasteur was a broad strokes guy. He convinced the world that germs existed. It was his German rival, Robert Koch, who gave us the precision.
Yes, Koch was all about rigor. He said, it's not enough to say germs cause disease. You have to prove that this specific bacterium causes this specific disease.
And he set up a 4-step checklist to do it. Koch's postulates.
That's right. It's the gold standard for proving causation.
You must find the suspect organism in every single case of the disease.
You must isolate it from the host and grow it in a pure culture in the lab.
Okay.
3, you must take that pure culture and infect a healthy host. And that host must get the same disease.
You must then re-isolate the exact same organism from that new host.
That is an incredibly high bar. You have to check every box.
It is. But he did it. He used these postulates to prove that a specific bacillus caused anthrax in cattle. Then he did it for tuberculosis. Then for cholera.
This must have felt like absolute magic to them. Suddenly, the enemy had a face. It wasn't the hand of Ishtar. It wasn't bad air. It was a tiny, rod-shaped thing you could see under a microscope. Mycobacterium tuberculosis.
It ushered in the glorious era of the magic bullet. The logic was simple and powerful. If the cause is a single microbe, the cure must be a single chemical that kills that microbe without harming the host.
And this led to everything from salvarsan for syphilis to sulfonamides and, of course, penicillin.
It was the ultimate triumph of the biomedical reductionist model. One cause, one cure.
But, and this is a huge but, here is where we hit the next wall. The one cause, one cure model works great for acute infections. It's perfect for strep throat.
Yeah.
You take an antibiotic, you kill the bacteria, you get better.
Right.
But it's a terrible model for heart disease. It's a terrible model for diabetes. It's awful for depression or Alzheimer's.
Exactly. We got so good at killing germs that we started living long enough to get diseases that aren't caused by a single germ. We entered the era of chronic, complex, non-communicable illness. And for that, Koch's postulates are basically useless.
So we had to invent new models of causation. We had to move from the idea of a bullet to the idea of a web.
Let's look at the epidemiological triad. This was the first step towards that complexity. Imagine a triangle.
Right.
At one corner, you have the agent, that's the germ or a toxin or a chemical. At the second corner, you have the host, that's the person, their age, their immunity, their genetics. And at the third corner, you have the environment. That's sanitation, crowding, poverty, the weather.
So take tuberculosis as an example. You need the agent, the bacteria. But not everyone who breathes it in gets sick. If the host is well-fed and rested, their immune system fights it off.
Right.
If the environment is a sunny, well-ventilated house, the bacteria dies quickly. But if the host is malnourished and stressed and lives in a dark, crowded tenement,
then the triangle connects, all three factors are present, and you get the disease. This explains why poverty is such a strong predictor of TB, even though the bacteria itself is the agent.
But even the triad is a bit too simple for something like cancer, right? There isn't really a single agent in the same way.
Right. So we move to a more sophisticated model. The wheel of causation. Picture a wheel. The hub, the very center, is the host, specifically their genetics, the core of who you are. The rim of the wheel is the environment, biological, social, and physical.
And the spokes connect the two.
Exactly. For a disease like Huntington's, the hub is everything. It's almost purely genetic. The environment barely matters. For getting a broken leg in a car crash, the rim is everything. It's purely environmental.
But for most things,
heart disease, schizophrenia, most cancers, the wheel spins. The rim pushes on the hub. A stressful environment triggers a genetic predisposition. A diet high in certain fats environment interacts with genes that control cholesterol.
And then we get to the most complex and I think the most accurate model for our modern world, the web of causation.
The web. I love this model because it acknowledges that there is often no single cause. It's a mess. It's a tangle.
So how would that work for, say, type 2 diabetes?
Okay, what causes type 2 diabetes? Is it sugar consumption? Yes, partly. Is it a genetic predisposition? Yes, that's a factor. Is it a sedentary lifestyle? Yes, that's huge.
But what causes the sedentary lifestyle?
Right. Maybe the person works 2 jobs and has no time to exercise. That's an economic cause. Maybe their neighborhood has no sidewalks or safe parks. That's an urban planning cause.
And what causes the high sugar intake? Maybe they live in a food desert where cheap processed food is the only thing available. That's a political and social cause.
Exactly. So it's a spider web. Economics leads to urban planning, which leads to diet, which leads to obesity, which triggers a genetic predisposition, which leads to insulin resistance. And now you have the disease.
And the beauty of the web model is that it gives you multiple places to intervene.
That's the key. You can try to fix the insulin with medicine, or you can try to fix the diet with education, or you can build a park and subsidize a grocery store. You can cut the web at any point. You don't have to attack the center.
There's one more model I found really helpful for visualizing this. Rothman's causal pies.
Oh, I use this with my students all the time. It's brilliant. Imagine a pie tin. A specific disease, let's say a case of lung cancer, is a full pie. To get that disease, you have to fill the tin with different slices. These slices are component causes.
Okay, so give me an example.
Let's say lung cancer is the pie. For one person, the pie might be made of 3 slices. Slice A is smoking. Slice B is a specific genetic predisposition. And slice C is asbestos exposure at work. When all 3 slices are in the tin, the pie is full and the person gets cancer.
So if I have slice A, smoking, but I don't have slice B, genetics, and I don't slice C, asbestos, my pie isn't full. I don't get the cancer.
Exactly. This perfectly explains the Uncle Bob phenomenon. My Uncle Bob smoked 2 packs a day his whole life and lived to be 90. Well, Uncle Bob never got the other component cause slices. His pie never filled up. For someone else, smoking was the final slice that completed a pie that was already mostly full.
This is empowering, in a way. It means we don't need to eliminate every risk factor to stop a disease. We just need to remove one slice from enough pies.
Precisely. If we ban asbestos in the workplace, we stop all the cancers for whom asbestos was a necessary slice. We didn't cure cancer, but we prevented it.
And this brings us right to the cutting edge. Genetics, and now epigenetics. It feels like we are circling back to the beginning in a strange way.
We absolutely are. Epigenetics is the study of how the environment influences the expression of our genes. We used to think genes were a fixed blueprint, a deterministic code. I have the gene for X, so I will inevitably get X. But epigenetics says, no. The gene is more like a light switch. The environment is the finger that flips that switch on or off. Things like trauma, diet, stress, pollution, even love. These things leave chemical markers on our DNA that can change how our genes behave, and we can even pass some of those changes to our children.
So the environment of the Indus Valley and the constitution of Ayurveda are meeting the DNA of modern science. It's not just the germ, like Pasteur said, and it's not just the terrain, like Hippocrates said. It's about how the terrain talks to the blueprint.
That is a beautiful synthesis, yes. We are recovering that ancient holistic view, but with molecular precision.
So we've traced this incredible history. We've gone from demons to DNA. But what does this mean for us, for society? We need to talk about the implications of these changing definitions.
We do. And first, we have to deal with our own language. We use the word sick very loosely. But in medical sociology, there's a strict and very useful difference between disease, illness, and sickness.
This distinction really helped me understand my own experiences. So disease is the biological thing. The virus, the tumor, the broken bone. It's the objective finding a doctor can see on a scan.
Right, the pathology.
Illness is the subjective experience, the pain, the fear, the nausea, the suffering. It's what I feel.
The personal experience.
And sickness is the social role.
Yeah.
It's society saying, okay, you have an illness, so you are granted the rights and responsibilities of being sick. You don't have to come to work today.
And they don't always overlap. That's the crucial point.
Right. You can have disease without illness.
Think of high blood pressure or a very early stage cancer. Your body is biologically broken, but you feel totally fine. This is dangerous because you won't seek help.
And you can have illness without disease. This is so important. You can be in terrible pain or have chronic fatigue, but the doctor runs every test and says, there's nothing wrong with you. Your blood work is normal.
Which is incredibly invalidating for the person suffering. Because you are ill, but you don't have a recognized disease label, and because you don't have the label, society often denies you the sickness role. Your boss says, the doctor said you're fine, you need to come to work.
This leads right into the ethics of definition. The philosopher Christopher Borse writes about this. What counts as normal versus pathology.
A huge question.
Is being extremely short a disease? Is being bald a disease? 20 years ago, was shyness a personality trait or was it social anxiety disorder?
We are in a period of intense medicalization. We are taking normal, or at least common, human variances and turning them into pathologies, into diseases that need treatment.
Grief is a great example. If your spouse dies, you're supposed to be profoundly sad. That is a normal, healthy human reaction.
It is.
But if you are sad for too long, according to the diagnostic manual, you now have major depressive disorder. We have turned a human experience into a medical condition to be treated, often with pharmaceuticals.
And while treatment helps many people, it also changes how we see ourselves. If I'm sick, I'm a passive victim of my biology. If I'm just sad, I am an active human being going through a difficult part of life. It shifts the locus of control.
And we have to talk about the ethics of care that comes from this. The Hippocratic Oath. First, do no harm.
A revolutionary idea. In Mesopotamia, if the patient died, it was the god's will or the patient's fate. The doctor wasn't responsible in a moral sense, even if he was legally liable for his fee or his hands.
But Hippocrates said, no, when I intervene, I am responsible for the outcome.
It's a huge shift in a doctor's identity, from a conduit of ritual to an active agent of change.
But access to that care has always been unequal. We saw right at the beginning with the Code of Hammurabi. The slave gets different care than the free man.
And we see it today. The concept of desha, the land or geography from Ayurveda, is still the best predictor of health. Your zip code predicts your life expectancy better than your genetic code.
That's a powerful statement.
But it's true. If you live in a neighborhood with high pollution, no grocery stores with fresh produce, and high crime leading to chronic stress, your causal pie is filling up much faster than someone's in a wealthy, clean, safe suburb.
That is the ultimate injustice of etiology. The causes of sickness are not distributed equally.
They never have been.
Which brings us to the final and maybe most important implication, the role of public health. If we learned anything from the Indus Valley and from John Snow, it's that the best medicine isn't a pill.
It's the infrastructure. It's the environment. The single biggest lifesaver in the history of our species wasn't the heart transplant or the MRI machine.
It was the sewer.
It was the sewer. It was the water treatment plant. It was the vaccine. It was putting a window in a tenement bedroom to let in sunlight and fresh air.
It's prevention, which is so unsexy. No one makes a heroic TV drama about a city planner installing a new storm drain.
But that city planner saves more lives than the superstar surgeon.
And there's the economic argument, too. It is infinitely cheaper to clean the water than to treat 10,000 cases of cholera. It is cheaper to subsidize fresh vegetables than to perform a lifetime of triple bypass surgeries.
But our system is designed to treat the crash, not to fix the road. We are still, fundamentally, the descendants of the ashipu, the field medic, patching up the wound after the battle. We need to become better architects.
We need to be more like the engineers of Mohenjo-Daro.
That is the challenge of the next century. We have cracked the code of the genome. We know the agent better than ever. Now we have to fix the web.
It's been quite a journey today. We've walked through the temples of Babylon, the bathhouses of the Indus Valley, the anatomy labs of Alexandria, and the slums of 19th century London.
And in every single era, we found that the way we explain sickness is actually the way we explain ourselves. Are we sinners being punished?
Are we hydraulic machines that have gotten clogged?
Are we ecosystems out of balance?
Or are we just complex genetic codes interacting with a challenging environment? Perhaps we're all of them at once.
I think we are.
We started with demons and we ended with DNA. But in a way, they are the same thing. Invisible, powerful forces that seem to control our fate. The difference is now we have the tools to talk back to them. But the question remains. In our quest to kill all the germs, have we forgotten how to tend the garden?
That is the question I want everyone to sit with.
Before we wrap up, thank you to all our partners, sponsors, and scholars who made this podcast and the research possible. We're truly grateful for your support.
And to our listeners, thank you for being part of this journey with us. If you enjoyed today's episode, be sure to subscribe and follow Stack Studios for more informative content, and support us on Patreon.
Until next time, stay curious, keep learning, and let the search for wisdom guide you forward. Have a great day.